Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for tuning in to the SHC Division of Business podcast. This is your host, Ethan Sisk, and today we'll be featuring a regional sales manager, Julie Goolsby. In today's episode, we'll cover Julie's climb in the sales world, how students should craft a LinkedIn profile to grab employers' attention, and the different things sales industry recruiters like to see. Miss Goolsby graduated in 2008, and now she's back this weekend because she's on the board of trustees. So,
And Mardi Gras.
They both go hand in hand.
Absolutely.
How did you choose Spring Hill to come here as a student?
Spring Hill was actually an accidental blessing. So I was set to go to the University of Alabama up until, March of my senior year. I'd paid my deposit, had picked a roommate, like I was going to Alabama. And I just said, I got a mailing from the admissions office, and I said, you know what, I'm just going to go do the tour. That way I can at least see what they have to offer.
Yeah.
And I came and did the tour, and I fell in love with the campus. I sat in on an English class. I fell in love with that professor. And then I changed my mind.
Is the professor still here by chance?
No, he retired. Dr. Sauer was one of the best English professors that I think ever graced Spring Hill's campus. He's an icon in his own way. And so, but yeah, I made sure to take at least one of his courses while I was a student officially here.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Well, very grateful for him to influence you to come here because you've done great things for the campus. And
thank you.
Obviously, you're continuing. You're also on the board for diversity and inclusion here?
I was. So I served as the co-chair back in 2020 during the COVID timeframe and did a lot of great work with Telluride Crenshaw was part of that, and some people who have since gone on to different careers in other places, but we'd had a lot of great programming initiatives and things that were very near and dear to all of our hearts that I know that Vonnie is going to continue to build upon those things in her role.
That's great. That's wonderful. Can we switch to your professional career?
Absolutely.
You went into you started as a sales executive for Hershey's. Is that correct?
No. So I was a customer sales executive at the Hershey Company.
Yes.
But the way that I started, I'll take a step back and give you like a full digest.
Please.
So, when I was a student here, I graduated in 2008. And if anyone knows anything about that time, 2008 was just a hot mess express for college graduates because the economy just tanked during that time frame. So you basically had two options. You could go at it and try to have a career, or you could go back to school. And if you did a career, there was a lot of risk there. There were lots of layoffs, and you just weren't quite so sure what was going to happen. So I decided to blend the two and take a gap year. And the plan was to take 1 year off and then go to law school. Well, I didn't end up doing that. I took a year off and I never went back to school. So in the year off, I started out, because it was supposed to just be a year, I started out working as a manager in training for Abercrombie & Fitch because it was local and I just needed something to get by for a year.
They've got good style too.
Yeah. So I worked out at Abercrombie & Fitch, and then I was recruited to become a corporate recruiter for a company here locally. It paid more. So I was like, okay, that's great. I started with that company, was there for maybe 6 or 7 months, give or take, and then they had layoffs.
What year was this now?
This was now the very beginning of 2009.
So this is when it's still kind of improving the economy?
It's still not so great. It's still not doing well.
Because the main crash was 2007 to 2008?
Well, but then the fallout is still there, right?
Yes.
And so I became a statistic of the period of time that I was hoping to not be one of those people. But I got laid off for my first job. And I was like, okay, well, that's not fun. And then I went to go work for another company, Personal Resources in Dothan, Alabama, like the middle of nowhere. But I needed a job. And so I was a recruiter and had a wonderful team there and learned a lot. It's a family business, and so this small team, and the opportunity for growth just wasn't as big as I wanted it to be. And so then I started to kind of explore my options. And I just happened to come across a posting for the Hershey Company. And that position was the retail sales representative, who are literally the people when you go into the grocery store. They're the ones that make sure all the shelves are stocked. When there's promotions going on, they make sure all of the programming is executed. They're the boots on the ground, so to speak.
So it's a very baseline position.
It's entry level, but entry level to the point that you still have very strong connections to the company itself. And it's one of those positions because Hershey promotes from within. They're very big about that. So once you get in, the idea is that you move up because they want their core people to be those who've experienced it all the way up. And so I took that role. I was in the role for 2 years, and then I was promoted to from retail sales representative to a customer sales executive. And I actually moved to Hershey, Pennsylvania for that job.
That's where the headquarters is?
That's where the headquarters is. And I was in a role for 2 years, almost to the date, before I took another position for another customer sales representative or executive role in Charlotte area.
That's where you currently are now.
Currently live in Charlotte. So holistically, I was with Hershey for 10 and a half years.
Wow.
And then I was approached to move to my current company, which is B&G Foods.
Yes. So yesterday when we spoke, you said that young people should really jump at the opportunity to travel.
Absolutely.
Is that from your experience moving to Pennsylvania?
Yes. So when I was offered the job to go to Hershey, Pennsylvania, there was a huge part of me that was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy.
Across the world.
Yeah. Well, it's like 14 hours away from my family.
Yeah.
And I come from a very big family. Growing up, we were all, for the most part, our core nuclear family was within like 20, 30 minutes of each other. We had
wonderful.
Sunday dinners all on the weekends every week. Easter Sunday, we all went to church together. Christmases, there was at least 50, 60 people in a house just cramming and, duking it out and having a good time. And so to pick up everything and then move across the country where you know absolutely no one, and it's cold. I don't like to be cold. So there was a lot of just anxiety around that. But you have to get uncomfortable to progress sometimes and stretch yourself and just really go after it. Because, you're only going to get an opportunity to go wherever you want to go so many times in your life. And it's better to do it, in my opinion, when you're young, before you're married, before you have children. Let's just go and be flexible and be malleable to life's experiences and get the most out of it.
And like you said, if you go while you're young, you can experience the beneficial parts of it, but you can also kind of avoid getting moved around when you're older and want to settle down as well.
Absolutely. I think especially nowadays, if you're more open to relocation, especially if you're with a company and they say, hey, we want you to go do this job, but it's X far away. You go, you make that commitment, and sometimes that sacrifice to relocate. You put in the hard work and the effort, and then you get asked to do something else. You do that enough, and that loyalty becomes a two-way street. And so that by the time you are 15, 20 years in your career, you can go back and say, hey, well, I've moved for you 10 times. This time you've come to me and said, hey, I want you to take this position. And I can kind of confidently say thanks, but no thanks. If you're okay, I'd rather do this. And you have some equity and some positioning to be able to make that.
Would you feel that would also transfer companies?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Because I think what companies, and now it's a little different, because COVID has taught us that we don't have to be necessarily at a particular place. So you do have employers who don't have as strict relocation guidelines or requirements, because you can do things through Teams and Zoom and whatever. But the flexibility, I think, is a good thing. And the companies will know that, hey, you're committed. You're willing to do the work to get it done, and you're a team player. Yeah. And sometimes being a team player requires some of those sacrifices.
I feel also in your field of sales marketing that, confidence is a huge determiner of success.
Yes.
And you really need confidence to go move across country. So if you see those employees that are, don't shy away from an opportunity to move, then they could also be potential good sales figures.
Yes. And I would also say, if you're not confident, fake it till you make it. There's a reason why
That's
people
the
say
motto.
that. Just like, okay, do it scared. There's some times when I've been absolutely terrified of doing something. I'm sweating bullets and about to go into a presentation. I'm like, I just may very well throw up in the next 5 minutes, but you suck it down and you just go through it. And then you come out the other side and you're like, you know what? I didn't die. And so sometimes you have to fake the confidence and you have to just put yourself out there and just get it done.
And you receive the growth and then also just like the personal, like knowing that you did that and you can use that as like, okay, I'm scared to do this now, but wait, I got my past experiences of conquering this, so maybe I can. Yeah.
And I heard it said, I'm probably going to misquote this in some way, so I apologize to whomever said it first, but there was someone that said, you know, I've never met a day I haven't beat, and so I'm still here. So there's something to that, right?
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it was not mine.
There's a quote that you put on LinkedIn or a phrase. Would you mind? I loved it. Would you mind if I read it to the podcast? And
surprise me. It's good.
Nick Saban's retirement reveals one very alarming fact about our society and career expectations. You can work harder, smarter, and better than your peers while delivering best-in-class results until you're 72. You can even be declared the GOAT. Despite it all, some will say you still had more to give and try to convince you to stay for their sake. Take your PTO, y'all. What's that mean?
Personal time off. Take your vacation days.
Yeah, PTO is very important. And retire before 72. If you want to work longer, it should be your choice. You'll never satisfy everyone in this world.
Yes.
I think that's great. And I mean, it's because people always want you if you're an asset.
Yes. Absolutely.
And Nick Saban's a great asset to Alabama. And it's hard to see him go, but it's the right decision for him. I'm sure many people will be gone before 72 if they're in his position.
Well, and it's one of those things because my family is a huge football family, Roll Tide, and my husband graduated from the University of Alabama. And he went to Alabama before Saban was there, and he was a student when Saban arrived. So we've gone through all the emotions. And we actually pegged that Saban was going to retire.
This year?
We did. We pegged it, and I said, "Yeah, I think he's given all he can give, you know." And I say that to say, especially in the environment that we're in right now, there's companies laying people off left and right every day. Saban was fortunate enough, and we know, especially with Alabama football or in sports in general, you can be amazing and then walk in and have a bad season, and then you won't have a job suddenly. And I think nowadays, corporations' loyalty sometimes to their employees isn't as deep as the employee's loyalty to the company is. So you kind of have to assess your own situation, right? And I also think I'm a fan of working for a great leader. If I have an amazing leader, I will run through a brick wall for you. If I know you're going to be as good to me as I'm going to be to the company. But
what are characteristics? Sorry.
No. I think sometimes you have to know when it's best to walk away because we live in a capitalist society. And so that society will drain you of everything. And then you look around and what do you have left? Hopefully some money and some memories. But you've got to give, but at the same time know the limitations to giving to the system.
What would you say some good traits of a leader that inspires you has?
I love leaders that lead by example. I love working for people who don't ask me to do anything that they themselves aren't comfortable doing. I love leaders who empower, encourage, and evaluate. So give me the ability to go out and get the work done that I need to get done, and give me your confidence and your trust to say, you know what, Julie, I've given you all the resources. I trust you to go get the work done. So empower me. And also, if I make a mistake or I don't do something well, evaluate me on that performance and give me the guidance to go be better at that. I love a leader that's an advocate for their team, especially in sales and marketing. There may be times when you hit your number. There may be times when you don't hit your number. You're evaluated in a lot of different ways. A good leader knows when the organization may be asking too much of their team, and they will shield and protect their team as best they can and give appropriate feedback to the organization or to the employee. I would never want to work for a leader who, if, 2 levels up in the organization is coming down on me and they know the organization's wrong, they don't take their position, their power to say, hold on, that's not a fair assessment. I think a good leader is also very honest and transparent, and gives you the foresight or gives you the feedback to help you be successful. I also think a good leader is someone who is flexible. So the best leaders that I've ever worked for has looked at me as a whole person. I'm not just an employee of that organization.
Yeah,
I'm a mom. I'm a wife.
You're not defined off one, area
Absolutely.
either.
Absolutely. So if I have a bad Monday, that doesn't say, oh, well, Julie, you just didn't quite do it.
Yeah. No.
I've seen it happen to where someone had a freaking amazing year. And then come December, there were a couple blips in the road. And then all of a sudden, their performance evaluation became the mirror of that December performance. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's just a gut punch because you did 11 months of amazing work and that didn't help you out. So those are some of the things I would consider to be a great leader. But I think now more importantly is someone who sees you as a full person and knows that, if I work 50, 60 hours a week, I have other things that are going on that motivate me. I work so that I can live. I don't live to work, but I hope to enjoy the work that I do.
Yes. One thing I feel that is, challenging but beneficial for leaders is, trusting your subordinates. I recently did for Miss Wilborn's class, a presentation on a famous entrepreneur. I chose Travis Kalanick. He's the co-founder of Uber, but, there's a lot of controversy around him in the company. But the reason he grew it so fast is because he would find young entrepreneurs in the company and send them to big cities and say, unlimited budget, here are all these resources, make Uber a success. And, it was far from a one-man team because he had all those people.
Army.
Yeah,
yes.
exactly. Yes. So I thought that was kind of...
No, you're absolutely right, because I think if you can't trust the people that work for you, why are you even there?
It's not a team.
What are you doing? Yeah. It's not a team. It's it's a dictatorship or it's a whatever. You've got to be able to trust your team, and when you trust your team trusts you. One of the things I absolutely hate working for certain types of people is you always feel like you're in a gotcha moment. They may ask you a question and you're settling on yourself before you answer. It's like, well, where's this going?
It's just transactional.
Yeah, and it's like, well, are you trying to catch me in something, or are you like asking me a question to help me? Like, what's your angle? What's your objective? And when you work for a leader that you trusted, there's never any of that. You feel like, okay, they're asking to understand. They're seeking to understand. They're not trying to catch you in anything in particular. So, yeah.
Well, I feel like you kind of deployed great leadership tactics. Well, you got current or former Spring Hill students on at Hershey's before you left.
Yeah, I love Spring Hill. She's near and dear to my heart, and I love mentorship. I love giving back.
It's huge. I've recently kind of found myself a mentor. I'm trying to join the real estate field.
Okay.
I found a guy that had his brokerage, is now retired, but it's just that hands-on experience is great, and those students I feel very lucky to have found you.
Well, and it's a double blessing. I think mentorships should work both ways, and I don't feel like a lot of people take advantage of that opportunity. So even though I can help someone who's never worked in the company or never had a career in that field and help guide them, if I've worked my way up higher into the organization, they may now have visibility into things that I'm no longer privy to that can help me.
That's a great point. And
so just as so much as you mentor up, you should be willing to be mentored in the opposite direction. And it keeps you fresh, in my opinion.
Yeah, and learning and growth is a everlasting pursuit.
Lifelong learning. Yes, absolutely. Jesuit way.
So from Hershey's, you were recruited by B&G.
Yes.
How was that process like?
It was a great experience. And, having been a recruiter in my career, it's always refreshing to have people like reach out and try to steal you away, so to speak. And so I tell people never underestimate the power of the DMs on LinkedIn, because that's how my recruiter reached out to me. They sent me a message on LinkedIn. It was a very great process. And one of the things that made me excited about coming to B&G Foods is the fact that I love brands. I've always loved brands, iconic brands. And B&G is just a huge collaboration, amalgamation of a lot of brands that are near and dear to people's hearts. You've got Green Giant, you've got Mrs. Dash, you've got Ortega, Mama Mary's and Weber and Cinnamon Toast Crunch shakers, seasoning packets, and we expand and we're always innovative, like the new items that are going to be launching, like the Fireball and Sazerac and Buffalo Trace seasonings that we talked about in the class. And so it's a really great team too. And again, it comes back to leaders. When I interviewed, I got a very good sense that it was a leadership team that I would be supported by. And not only wanted me for the role that I was going to be there for then at that moment, but for me, a runway is huge. So I'm coming for this. But in my experience here, I want to be able to grow and develop and advance and as I'm learning, give back more. So what's my potential for promotion and career advancement within this company? And so it was all being offered. And so that made it a very attractive opportunity.
Was it some of the similar points that you would use to recruit people? Was that used on you? So you kind of...
Oh, yeah, of course.
You could use the reverse psychology?
Yes,
okay,
absolutely. Great. Well, and if you've been in that world of recruiting, you kind of, the angle, so you know what to look for.
The game.
And you also know red flags. Like if I ask certain questions in the interview process and they're answered a certain way, you can kind of get a feel for the company's culture and how the organization functions. And so that can tell you, okay, is this a team? Is this a corporation? Is this an organization that I want to be a part of? Does it have the culture that I'm looking for? And that's really important.
What is a red flag to you in an interview?
If you can't tell me what my top priorities are going to be when I onboard into the process, if you can't tell me what the onboarding process is going to look like, or if the onboarding process is very hands-off and isn't intimate, I really like to understand why the person that was previously in that role, why is that role available? Did someone get promoted, which is great, or did someone leave the organization? How transparent are you on that? Because I work in sales, and so a lot of the way that we get compensated is commission, I like to understand what the bonus structure looks like and how often it pays out. Because there's a lot of times where you work for companies and they say, oh yeah, we have bonus, but then no one ever makes the bonus.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, well that's
an unachievable bonus.
Yes. So do you have realistic goals and expectations of your sales team?
What are some good sales techniques that you use in your day-to-day?
I'm very big on relationships. I think, my opinion, and maybe I'm old school, sales is when you take a business relationship and turn it into a profitable partnership. Because people like to do business with people that they like. And the more authentic and real that I can be in all of my interactions with my customers, I believe increases my likelihood for success. I'm very transparent. Everything's not for everyone. Every company objective that I have doesn't fit all of my retailers equally. So what I like to do is use that relationship to say, hey, I know who you are as an end user, as a customer, and this is how I feel my objectives best apply to you.
Let me help you.
Let me help you. And because if I say, oh, well, we have this thing over here, we have this business proposition over here that we're employing in this market, and I've evaluated your business, and this is going to work for you. Or inversely, I say, hey, you're going to see other people doing this type of activations or promotions or launching these products. I've evaluated your position in the market, and it's not going to fit for you. And this is why I think so. But I want you to be aware that it's going to be out there. People appreciate that approach because I'm not going to sell you something that is of no value to you. Mm-hmm. Because what's going to end up happening is if it doesn't work out, either I'm a liar, a bold-faced liar, and knew it wasn't going to work out in the beginning, or I'm really bad at doing my pre-analysis and indexing against the true legitimacy of this working for you.
So in your profession, what exactly are you're selling? Like that a product should be at this space in a
So
store?
what I do is B&G Foods has a host of brands.
Yes.
We'll take Ortega, for example. Ortega is number one for taco sauces. And we love people who have Taco Tuesdays. So make sure you guys are doing Taco Tuesdays every Tuesday of every week. But my job is to make sure that my retailers have the best Ortega items in their stores.
Okay.
So if I know I have my traditional items that I believe every retailer should ever take, that would be my 8-ounce and 16-ounce taco sauce, mild and medium. So I want to make sure that my retailer has those items in distribution. And I also want to make sure that they're competitive with those items and are getting those items into the baskets of their customers. So that's part of my job. The other part of that is making sure that I analyze my retailer against their competition. And I provide my retailer with all the keys of success in being a true, what we call a joint business partner, and positioning them to win. So I go in and I say, hey, last year, this is what you did to be successful, or this is what the plan we had to be successful. And we set a goal of X. We achieved Y. This is what worked. This is what didn't work. And it's just a back and forth of collaboration on how to be successful with either it's the 8-ounce sauces or it's the new taco shells or it's whatever is going to fit their customer profile. And just working with them to understand how to best position my product to reach their customers.
Okay.
And that can be anything from just getting it in the door to getting it in the right spot.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I'm sure you're crucial advice for them in placement and strategy.
Absolutely. And that's where that relationship comes in. Mm-hmm. And it takes a while to build those relationships. And they have to be able to learn to trust you, to know that you're really just there to be a profitable partner with them and working towards the same goals, which is why in my world, joint business partnerships, that joint part is crucial. They have to have just as much skin in the game as we do. Yes. And we're all heading towards the same paths and objectives.
What would you think of the phrase, your network is your net worth?
I think there's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of truth to that. Someone said you can tell how successful you're going to be by your 5 closest friends.
Yeah.
I think there's a little elitism in that statement, but at the same time, professionally, that is very impactful. Mm-hmm. You want to put yourself in the position to win, and that requires being in the rooms that win, and being connected to the people that are winning, or knowing who's winning and figuring out how to be either connected to them in some way. Shape, form, or fashion, but it has to be authentic. That's one of the things that I know from learning networking. Some people think, I've got 10,000 connections on LinkedIn, and I'm just so connected.
How many are real in person?
Yes. How many of them, if you were to call their phone today and say, hey, I need some career advice, are going to pick up? That's a true network versus, I had 100 people like a post from last week. Well, if you got laid off, how many of those 100 people can you legitimately count on to say, hey, would you mind forwarding my resume on to someone? That's the value of a network.
Definitely not 100.
Probably not 100. Probably not 100. Unless you're like, well, then you might not have gotten laid off. I'll keep that one to myself.
Of the brands that you advertise, this is not insider trading, but
okay.
which ones do you like to talk about the most?
Oh,
and think have the most upside?
Well, now...
And sorry, how many are there in total?
So B&G has over 50 brands.
And you are with all 50 that you can advertise?
In my current role, I handle all of our meals brands and all of our spices brands.
Okay.
And so we have 4 total business units, and I'm managing 2 of those 4 business units. Well, I love all of our babies. The one that I have had the most excitement, well, there's a couple, and for different reasons. So our Ortega business is part of the meals business unit, and I love that brand because it's so iconic, and it's so loved and known, and you can take what the brand means to a lot of people, and then you could always like elevate it. So that's a brand that's established, well known, and you're just consistently elevating it and making sure that it still rings true into people's hearts. So that's, for right now, that's my favorite iconic B&G brand.
Okay.
And my favorite new news is going to be on the spices side of the business. Okay. And we are, like I said, launching a lot of innovation items. And one of the things that I'm excited about is going to be 4-6s. And 4-6s, are you familiar with Yellowstone?
The show, I have not completed it, but I've seen bits and pieces.
Okay. So Yellowstone is a very popular series. Yes. And we have partnered with Taylor Sheridan, who is the creator of Yellowstone, and who recently bought the 4-6s Ranch, which is a legitimate ranch. It's over 100 years old. It's one of the oldest ranches in the entire country. And it is, again, an authentic ranch. And Taylor Sheridan, in his creation of Yellowstone, has just really decided that he wants something that's going to have a long-term legacy far and beyond when Yellowstone is no longer the series. Like, what does that evolve to? Well, the 4-6s Ranch is a real live ranch. And so he's taking that iconic ranch, and he is now taking the 4-6s Ranch, and he's utilizing it to bring that authentic cowboy experience into homes all across America.
Wow.
And he is we've partnered with him as a licensing agreement to create his first ever 4-6s spices brand. And he's also doing hot sauces and barbecue sauces. And you think about the magic of what he has the opportunity to be, and being part of that is just, you can't even put a pulse on it.
No.
He's got 4-6s ranch waters coming out, which I've tried, and they're very great for all of the students who are 21 years of age and can legally indulge in those beverages. There are partnerships with grills where they create 4-6s grills, and it's just a very unique opportunity to be about part of something newly iconic.
I would say what he's doing too is also a great characteristic of a leader, kind of leaving it better than he found it.
Yes. Yes.
Implementing things that are going to last.
Well, and it's one of those things where you say, okay, well, it's been around for over 100 years, but it's like, but you have something that's so awesome that only a limited number of people even know about. Now it gets to be in the households all across the entire country, and that's just amazing.
And he came to y'all first to.
I'm not sure who approached whom. I'm not that high up in the organization. But I know that he is super collaborative and very intimately involved in the process. So, for example, every single spice that we are creating, every barbecue sauce, everything that's got his logo on it, he's assisted in the recipe process. He's assisted and directed and guided the tasting of the process. If he tasted and it doesn't taste like something that a rancher or a cowboy would eat or love, he's like, it's not quite there yet. So he is hands-on involved in the creation of this line of products. There's some people who will license their brands out and they'll just say, just make something that you think will work best for us. That's not what Taylor is doing. He's truly attached, and this is his baby. So
I'm sure it's going to be great.
Yeah, it's going to be special. So I'm happy to be a part of that. So I've got my iconic stuff and my newly iconic stuff. Those are my babies right now.
Gotcha. Yeah. Transitioning to marketing, at the beginning of the semester, I became the social media intern for the business division.
Awesome. Congratulations.
So thank you. I'm comprising posts for the Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn pages. Do you have any marketing advice for me or the division?
Know your audience. So all of those different social media platforms that you mentioned serve completely different audiences. So what you put on LinkedIn should not be the same material that you post on Facebook, which should not be the same material that you put on Instagram, because those users are entirely different, and the voices that you use in those spaces are different. And so make sure that the platform that you're utilizing, the message and the way that you send that message resonates with the super users of that particular platform. Because if you have an overly professional or just a little stiff communication. Not to say that LinkedIn is stiff, but it's stiffer than TikTok. You're not going to get the traction that you would need if you knew the audience. So just know your audience and make sure you're using the right message type for the right medium.
Thank you. Yeah. We have our most following on LinkedIn, so not that we don't give equal love to all, but I really make sure those LinkedIn ones are professional.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think you have the most followings on LinkedIn?
Because students and alumni, that's the professional space, and that's Springo's professional place, and it's a maybe it can aid in your resume or about me slot on LinkedIn, and if you feature it, you have to follow it.
Yes.
What advice would you give to? You said you got found on LinkedIn for your B&G position. What advice would you give to students to make their LinkedIn page marketable and, I guess, vivid for recruiters?
Well, obviously, keep it clean. Keep it professional. Make sure you have a really good picture. One of the things that people like to see, they don't like that little bob head with the gray background. There's no image. There's no real person there, right? So make sure you have a really good, well done professional photograph to start your profile with. Make sure as a student who's not yet started their career that you have indicators of what you want to do. So some people will use their About Me section to state things that they want to do, interested in X type of opportunities. So speak to the people that you want to reach out to you. When you list your job experience, especially for someone who hasn't had like an adult job yet, show how successful you've been in the things that you have. Like have results.
Use your resources.
Yes. Well, and have results. Like, okay, so say for instance, I worked at Disney when I was a student at Spring Hill. I did the Disney internship, right? Well, some people was like, oh, she interned at Disney. Like they just think, oh, well, she sold T-shirts in the shop or whatever. Well, no, I took courses while I was there. I networked with people that were in the corporate law office. I was a lead. I got promoted while I was, there's a lot of things that you do. So show the results of what you're doing now and make sure that it transfers into something that you want to do later. So say, for example, if you decide you want to work at a news station, highlight your communication skills, highlight your ability to go research information, highlight your ability to be able to just use the same skills that you want to have the job ultimately, if that makes any sense.
It does.
And also, especially for younger students or people younger in their career, I don't think it's utilized enough, but that referral system or that recommendation section where people can actually write comments about who you are and how you work, like get your professors to speak about you. Get your peers to speak about you and things that you've done. Highlight those projects because people look at that type of
Definitely.
thing.
And is that where you can endorse each other?
Yes. So use the LinkedIn endorsements. Use those. I think students who don't have career results yet need those endorsements of the professors and the advisors and people in your life to get you going. Show that potential.
It shows validity.
Absolutely. So, you do an internship, have the person that you interned with write an endorsement. That's nothing better because it's a double impact. It's there on your resume, but they're like, no, the person actually did a really good job.
Yeah. Going into the sales field, what do you think is needed on a LinkedIn for experience or just attributes?
Sales is such a tricky one.
That's kind of where my head is right now. I want to go into sales.
I think it is flexibility and tenacity. How do you articulate that? How do you articulate understanding information? So to be good at sales, you have to know your data. You have to be able to analyze why something works, why it didn't work, why the situation is what it is, what people are into, what's on, what's trending. So do you work in a situation to where you are required to analyze data, or you're required to correct something that's wrong? Do you work in a situation, or how are you building relationships? So, like, are you an SGA? Are you in any kind of club or organization? Are you an athlete? Athletes are really good salespeople. Have you taken any type of leadership role in any capacity as a student? So leadership experience is strong. I would say definitely if you're part of any honor societies on the campus. I think personally, volunteerism. I'm a service oriented person just in general, but I think people who are service oriented have compassion, which means they build relationships with people they don't even know. So how well can they build relationships with people that they're working towards that joint business partnership? So, showcasing your service to others, I think is very important. If you do anything that is of the arts, so are you in acting classes, or have you done theater, things like that? There's so many layers to sales that I just think you're just highlighting your personality and results.
Why would you think that athletes can kind of transition to sales?
Competitive.
Okay.
It's a competitive. Now, do you play a sport?
I do.
Okay. So there's a lot of salespeople who look for athletes. I've worked in sales organizations where you've got former professional football players or basketball players or in baseball players who now work in sales. It's something about the competitive dynamic. And it's also something to do with the ability to literally get knocked down and get back up and keep going, because you're not going to win every sale. Yeah. You're not. There's just going to be some, and there may be as an athlete, you can go into a game and you're like, there's no way we're going to win this game. But what do you have to do? You still have to show up. You still have to give your best effort. And if you're smart, you learn something from it. And there's something about the tenacity and the ability to just keep getting up over and over again that really works well in the sales environment, because you have that grit and that determination.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it works well.
So you're on the board of trustees.
Yes.
How did that position come about?
I was asked to serve.
Aw.
I still don't know why, but I'm glad for it. I was asked to serve. Someone recommended me to Father Lucy. And Father Lucy, as I'm sure you know, was one of our longest presidents of Spring Hill College. And he was the president while I was a student here. And rest his soul, was still one of my most favorite people that I've ever known in my entire life. And so Father Lucy asked me to join the board. And when Father Lucy asks you to do something, you don't say no. And so I did not tell Father Lucy no, and I'm still here in his memory, hopefully making him proud.
I think so.
Thank you.
How many total members are there?
We're a little over 30. I don't know the exact number because we just added some new trustees. Even just this meeting, started in January, so we're a little bit over 30 right now. Mm-hmm.
I bet it's a great networking space for sure to be on the board.
It is, but I go back to relationships, and I'm just impressed with the people that I've gotten to know that I consider dear friends that I didn't know 7 years ago. Mm-hmm. And, they may be in politics, or they may be in banking, or they may be in real estate, and our worlds would have never crossed, but professionally. But because we've crossed in our service to Spring Hill, I've gotten to meet a ton of great people. And so I love the friendships that I now have.
That's so special.
It really is.
Do you feel that there's kind of common traits between everyone, since all being Spring Hill alum?
So they're not all Spring Hill alum.
Oh, really?
So that's one of the things, is that you don't have to have graduated from Spring Hill to be
You just got to be a big old donor?
No, you don't have to be a big donor either. You know what makes it all make sense? We passionately love Spring Hill College. Everyone that sits on the board of trustees, in my very humble opinion, has a heart and love for Spring Hill that cannot be matched. And it is because we love Spring Hill so much and we work so hard to make sure that others get the opportunity to benefit or have the experience to be of service, men and women of service to others. And we want that opportunity to live in perpetuity for the next generations, and that we're committed to Spring Hill that make it such a great group of people.
That's a great common denominator.
Absolutely is. Absolutely.
For sure. Well, I think that's all for today.
Okay.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. It's a joy to be here. So like I say, if you guys ever need or want or for me to come back, meet with students, have Q&A sessions, anything like that, whatever I can do to help Spring Hill and her students, I'm here for it.
Whenever you're free, I'm sure your schedule's a little tighter than ours, and we'll always be here. You know where to find us.
Well, thanks for having me. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Goolsby.
You're welcome.
I would like to personally thank everyone who tuned into this episode of the SHC Division of Business podcast. Our aim is to give young professionals insight into their desired field or potential job of choice. If you gain anything from this, or have any compassion whatsoever, please share with someone you see fit.